Hey, Paulies Sleepers fans, welcome back. Quick video today. A couple things I wanted to talk about. Some developments that I see in the league this week that I think could be very impactful. I want to talk about the situation in New Orleans with Mark Ingram, and I want to talk about Lamar Jackson today. So what happened is Mark Ingram is going to be suspended for 4 games for performance-enhancing drugs. So he's going to appeal that suspension like they always do. But we need to look at, if this suspension upheld, it's going to very much impact Alvin Kamara's draft stock. Like I needed another reason to love Alvin Kamara. But guys, I've been on this guy since week 2 of last year while Adrian Peterson was still on the team and before anybody really knew what they had in Alvin Kamara. I was watching him in Tennessee as well. And, this is the way I look at it. And this is where I think Kamara is being a little underrated, if that's possible right now, from what I see on mock drafts. And of course, his value is going to go up now automatically. But the first thing we have to look at is what happened with Willie Snead last year. In 2016, Willie Snead had a pretty darn good year and was being, drafted pretty high in mock drafts going into last year until he got suspended for 4 games. He never really made the field that much when he came back from that suspension. They kind of moved Brandon Coleman up the depth chart and used him very sparingly. I can't remember, I didn't look, but I can't remember Snead ever getting more than 2 or 3 or 4 catches a game. He kind of fell into the abyss, and then he hit the free agency market and they let him go. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at how they might treat Mark Ingram when he comes back from the suspension. Also looking at the fact that Mark Ingram is not at practice right now and planning on not going to OTAs. He wants a long-term deal. So he's not going to get that work. You always got to be worried about a guy that doesn't get, if he's not going to show up now, once that suspension starts, he won't be able to, practice. So you've got a guy that might be coming in really cold week 5. They've always kind of disrespected him too. I think the team might be ready to move on from him. He wants a long-term deal. I don't think they're going to give it to him with the suspension. Let's look at how Alvin Kamara was used throughout the year last year. Didn't really get going until they let Adrian Peterson go, but still only got around 14 or 15 touches until the last 3 weeks of the year, where he jumped up to about 20 to 21 touches a game in those last 3 weeks. He finished the year with 6.1 yards per carry, which is just sick. It's like Jamal Charles numbers. And 10.1 yards per reception. He had more receiving yards than rushing yards for 1,554 all-purpose yards, second in the league with 13 touchdowns behind Todd Gurley. So what if he starts getting 20 touches like he did at the end of the year? Again, Mark Ingram was there and he was healthy. Mark Ingram's not going to be there at the beginning of the year. What if he starts getting 20 touches a game? That's 320 touches. If you do the math, that's 2,000 all-purpose yards plus, with the potential of 15 touchdowns. Even if his touchdowns regress this year, if he gets 2,000 all-purpose yards or even 1,800 and 10 touchdowns, that's huge. So I put him right now behind Bell, Gurley, and David Johnson. I even put him ahead of Zeke. I put him ahead of Saquon. So the reason why I put him ahead of Saquon Barkley is, we're thinking he's going to get 300 plus touches. They're going to use him a bunch. But New Orleans is a much more explosive offense than the Giants. Yes, they have all the pieces in place, but I'll take the known versus the unknown all day long. If I had to gamble, I would definitely bet on Kamara getting those 300 touches before Saquon, just because I don't know how he's going to fit into that offense. And as far as Zeke, he doesn't catch that many passes. He's not going to catch more than 25 balls this year. That's what makes Kamara special. He will catch 60 balls this year, maybe even closer to 80 or 85. So I think Kamara right now is the number 4 overall running back in fantasy. And there's even guys saying to take him number 1 overall with his explosiveness. I'm not going to go there yet. You got to, I think, take Bell and Gurley before you take Kamara. But his suspension for Mark Ingram is going to really open the door here for Kamara to shine. So, like I said, I really didn't need any more evidence or anything to happen to make me like him more. But it came. 4 weeks. And the other thing, you've got this 4-week suspension. The team knew that Mark Ingram had a possible suspension looming going into the draft. And they drafted a running back like in round 9, a guy that might not even make the team. So that tells me too that they weren't worried about having to give Alvin Kamara the bulk, the workload in those first 4 games and maybe past that. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was Lamar Jackson and kind of reading the coach tea leaves, the coach speak. Looks like they're developing specific packages for him, which to me, I think he'll play week 1. He's not going to start week 1 unless there's an injury to Joe Flacco. But I think they're going to use him and they're going to put him out onto the field in specific packages so they can see what they have in him. Also, it's going to fuck with opposing defenses. So when they do this, they're going to force opposing defenses to game plan for his packages. Whether he's out there 3 times a game, 5 times a game, 10 times a game, they're going to have to take some of their practice to scheme for that. That's going to be a great benefit to the Ravens, and I think that's why they're going to do it. And if he's very, very successful on that limited work, we'll see more and more work for him. We'll see him out there more and more. And especially if Joe Flacco gets hurt, then, all bets are off, and he's going to be possibly, the sleeper quarterback in fantasy for this year because of his running ability. Needs to bulk up a little bit, eat a few cheeseburgers. But I think that Lamar Jackson is a definite dynasty pick, and he will go undrafted on your drafts this year. But look and see how they're using him in the first couple weeks. If you've got dead weight on your roster, and most of us usually do, you can drop that guy and pick up Lamar Jackson and see, this is a guy that might be able to get you a championship later on. Remember Robert Griffin. Remember, Andrew Luck when he first came out, how much he was running. What Russell Wilson is still doing with his legs, and Cam Newton. This is a guy that can get you that 60, 70, 80 yards rushing a game. And, like Tyrod Taylor too, even if he only throws 1 or 2 touchdowns, he can throw 2 touchdowns and have 2 or 3 interceptions and rush for 80 yards and still have a stellar top 5 fantasy week. That's why we like the running quarterbacks, like I talked about in my last video. So that's all I got for now. I just wanted to talk about Alvin Kamara, a.k.a. AK-41, and Lamar Jackson. Also wanted to mention that we may be done with YouTube here throughout this summer. It's official now. I'm going to do a podcast every week with the Juice in the Morning podcast with Justin Kelly, like I did last year for November. We're going to do one at the beginning of August and do like a draft special, helping people get ready for their drafts. And then we're going to do a weekly podcast. We're still going to do the DraftKings, but we're going to focus a lot more this year on your season-long leagues. And YouTube's just been pissing me off lately for political reasons. They're, shutting down a lot of voices politically on YouTube. I don't like that. Facebook is doing the same damn thing. That's why I don't monetize my videos, because once you monetize, then they can censor you. And I don't want that. I like the idea of being on a podcast, and you guys might like that too. You won't have to look at my ugly mug. You could just listen to my smooth, sexy, deep voice. And Justin has a very deep voice for radio too. But we had a lot of fun with the podcast. Jackson's going to help us out on the podcast this year. John Marchbanks from Pro Football Focus is involved. So that's really, really huge. And who knows, this may be the future of Paulies Sleepers is the podcast. But this is what we're going to do this year. So I'm going to keep doing these updates throughout the summer. But then, again, it's Juice in the Morning podcast. It's available anywhere where you can get your podcasts, including iTunes. And that's it. That's what we got for today. Kept it under 10 minutes, so you guys should like that. And you have a great week. God bless.